Hello, Rena. This is Sheldon. I hope you can hear me. I hope this is working.
If I could ask that anyone who has a device that makes a noise, if you could please turn it off or put it on silent. We will begin with some readings from Tehillim, Psalms, and the first kapitel of Tehillim will be kapitel Chaf Gimel, and it will be read by Elaine Moffat, Bernie's daughter.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi, Lo Echsar, Binot Desha, Yarbitzeni, Al Mei Menuchot Yinahaleni. Nafshi Shovev, Yancheni B'magle Tzedek L'man Shmo. Gam ki elech bege tzal mavet lo ira ra ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha hema Yenachamuni. Ta'arach lefanai shulchan neged sorarai. Dishanta b'Shem Roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orach yamim. A song of David. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days.
Murray Greenfield will now read Kapitel Tet Vav, Psalm 15.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagel b'halecha, mi yishkan b'har kodshecha, halach tamim v'po'el tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo. Lo iragel al lishona, lo asa l're'ehu ra'a, v'cherpa lo nasa al kravo. Nivzeh be'inav nim'as, v'et yirei Adonai yichabed, nishba l'hara v'lo yamir. Katzpol lo natan b'neshech, v'shoched al nakai lo lakach. Ose ele lo yimot leolam. A psalm by David. Hashem, who may sojourn in your text, who may dwell on your holy mountain. One who walks in perfect innocence and does what is right, and speaks the truth from his heart, who has no slander on his tongue, who has done his fellow no evil, nor cast disgrace upon his close one, in whose eyes a contemptible person is repulsive, but who honors those who fear Hashem. Who can swear to his detriment without retracting, who lends nor his money or interest, nor takes a bribe against the innocent. The doer of these shall not falter forever.
Chuck Feynman will now read Mizmor Tet Zayin, Psalm 16.
מכתם לדוד, שמרני אל כי חסיתי בך. אמרת לאדוני, אדוני אתה, טובתי בל עליך. לקדושים אשר בארץ המה, ואדירני כל חפצי בם. ירבו עצבותם אחר מהרו, בל אסיך נזקיהם מדם, ובל אשא את שמתם על שפתי. אדוני מנת חלקי וחוסי, אתה תומך גורלי, חבלים נפלו לי בנימים, אף נחלת שפרה עלי. אברך את אדוני אשר יצאנה, אף לילות ישכוני בליליותי. שיוויתי אדוני לנגדי תמיד, כי ממני בא למות. לכן שמח ליבי ויגל כבודי, אף בשרי ישכון לבטח. כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסידך לראות שחת. תודיעני אורך חיים, שמחות את פניך, נעימות במנחה נצח. The preamble to this says that one must have the humility and clarity of vision to recognize that his portion in life is allotted to him by God. Those abilities and powerful forces, which seem to be the determining factors of life, are merely the tools of the Creator who guides them. Amichtam bad David. Protect me, O God, for I have sought refuge in you. You have said to Hashem, you are my master, I have no claim to your benefit. For the sake of the holy ones who are interred in the earth, and for the mighty, all my desires are fulfilled because of them. Their sorrows will multiply, those who rush after other gods. I shall not pour their blood libations, nor carry their names upon my lips. Hashem is my allotted portion and my share. You guide my destiny. Portions have fallen to me in pleasant places. Even the inheritance is beautiful to me. I will bless Hashem, who has advised me. Also in the nights, my own intellect instructs me. I have set Hashem before me always, because he is at my right hand, I shall not falter. For this reason my heart does not rejoice, and my soul is elated, my flesh too rests in confidence. Because you will not abandon my soul to the grave, you will not allow your devout one to witness destruction. You will make known to me the path of life, the fullness of joys in your presence, the delights that are in your right hand for eternity.
There is a commentator on the Shulchan Aruch, the book of Jewish law, known as the Shach. And the Shach says that when we come to a levaya, a funeral, the soul of the nifter, the departed, is in this room somehow, and he's hearing us. I have to tell you, I had the pleasure of knowing Dad, Bernie, for many years, and I hope that I can honor him in some way. Dad was born in Winnipeg in 1931. He was a gold medalist, but you know where he was a gold medalist? At the Talmud Torah Night School. He studied accountancy and worked at essentially the same firm for his entire career. And the firm was known as Sandell Peltz, Spicer McGilvery, Doan Raymond, Penelker, Grant Thornton, and a few other names that I don't recall right now. He was an honest, hardworking, and ethical accountant until his retirement and even after for family members. About 20 years ago, his dear brother Irv and his dear cousin Bill Greenfield passed away. In many ways, these two fellows were his soulmates. He and Mom maintained a very close relationship with Libby Greenfield, and Dad and Libby always enjoyed each other's company. No matter how busy Zeta Bernie's or Dad's life was, family came first, as Evelyn said many times. When we lived around the corner from him, he would always drop by our house almost every day after work to see the grandchildren. You know, Zeta Bernie, we've kind of called him that for the past 30 years. He volunteered for a plethora of organizations, and he was ubiquitous amongst the community. I just like to name a few of the organizations that had the pleasure of his presence: the Talmud Torah, the Joseph Olinsky Collegiate, the Chevra Mishnaya Shul, the Chavarat Tfilah, the Chesed Shalemis, the Board of Jewish Education, Gwen Sector, and the Vad Ha'ir. He was also the treasurer of the Manitoba Red Cross and volunteered for many years with the Manitoba Marathon. He won the Shane Tov Award from the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg in 2006. He volunteered and did tax returns for many people in the community without getting paid. However, on occasion, he was paid with knishes. And I'd like to tell you about my first encounter as a family member with Dad. Something was wrong in our house. I don't remember what. So, of course, he dragged me to his favorite place. What's Zeta Bernie's favorite place? The hardware store. We walk into the hardware store, and he's got this big smile on his face, and he looks at me and he says, "I love the smell of hardware stores." Now, being the son of a greener, I said, "What did I get myself into?" And I have to say, it was good that he loved the smell of hardware stores. J&B, which is Jeff and Bernie, used to come and regularly repair things for us, and they would fix everything. It was really, they did a good job. What was really funny was watching the way they'd argue with each other. Anyhow, um, that was what Bernie was like. If there was something wrong and he was there, he would fix it. And he also, well, after a while, he got to tolerate me. You see, I gave him this wonderful thing, grandchildren. And if you knew my house on Montcalm, you see the garage was over here to the side, and it went down like a U. And people could come into my house and park their car vertically, and you could pull out of the garage and go past it. So whenever Lori would go into labor, he lived around the block from us, we would call and say, "Hey, Dad, come over. We got to go to the hospital." Zoom, he'd be there, parked right up against the house so we could get out. And I'd get Lori into the thing. I'd be a little nervous, you might say. I must have dinged his car about 6 times. Zeta Bernie never said a single word to me about it. I'm sure he said a few words to other people, but he never said a single word to me. I guess that just shows how much he loved family and the gift that was going to come sooner or later. But you know, the real thing that made me love him, and I don't know if I can say this, when my dad was sick and he was in the sharing home and it was hard for us to get there, Bernie was there every day. And I could feel good living in Toronto, knowing that Zeta Bernie was there. You know, there's a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Chesed olam yibaneh. The world is built on chesed, on kindness. And that type of kindness and that type of reliability is not the same as other kindnesses. And that type of sensitivity and that ability to see into a person and understand their fears and their concerns requires a great deal of empathy and a great deal of sensitivity. And it's very interesting because let's face it, when Bernie and Meyer got together for the first time, it was East meets West. And it didn't work out so good, but at the end, they were the best of buddies. And he took care of him like nobody did. And I'm forever grateful. And the last thing I want to say about Zeta Bernie is that he had this tremendous love of Yahadut, of Judaism. And he had a deep, deep faith, a tremendously deep faith. And, he was a traditional Jew. He had this tremendous deep sense of faith. And, my luck, I'm the rabbi. Whenever I go there, why did you guys make this law up? What's wrong with this? Why can't I do that? And I kind of like say, as I say to Elaine on occasion, I didn't make the law up. What are you looking at me for, And but with that sense of doubt, there was an underpinning of tremendous, tremendous faith. And when recently in Shul on past Shabbat, we read the book of Kohelet. Now, Kohelet can be looked at as the most depressing of all the Megillot that we have. But with all of that depression and all of that criticism, the book of Kohelet is one of the most profound statements of true faith that comes from the depths. And the end of the book of Kohelet says, Sof hadavar hakol nishma. When all is said and done, it just says one thing: revere the Lord. And I could feel that sense of faith and that wonderful criticism and that wonderful intelligence and that desire to learn, not only in the fact that he went back to university as a mature student, but in the fact that he had those conversations with me that were a little feisty, but tremendously, tremendously reverent. He's a special neshama, and I am so proud to be a part of the family. Tehei nafsho tzrura b'tzura chaim. May his soul be bound up in the ever eternal. Um, we will now hear from Bernie's three children, Elaine, Lori, and Jeff.
It's hard to choose what to say. There are so many things we remember about our dad. We'll say a few. Dad had a strong work ethic that he encouraged in all of us. I remember in high school being told that I had to work babysitting one night each weekend if I wanted to go out and party on a different night. I resented it at the time, but in retrospect, it was Dad, as a good accountant, teaching me fiscal responsibility. Dad, we can honestly say that you bequeathed your hard-working ethic to all three of us, and none of us actually knows how to relax. Dad and Lahavdil ben Chaim L'Chaim were so dedicated to us. No matter where we lived, what we needed, Elaine and I benefited from their moving talents as they moved us numerous times from city to city, packing boxes or pulling U-Hauls, even ruining one of their cars in the process. After Elaine's divorce, when her basement in Ann Arbor flooded, Mom and Dad came and helped her prepare her insurance claims by making lists of the many, many books in her basement that got ruined and helping her navigate the repair process. When Charlie and I just moved to Toronto, I broke my leg while in the 8th month of my pregnancy with Noam and had no support system yet. Dad, who had not yet retired, flew in within a couple of days of my fall, dropping everything in his busy life here to do my carpool until we could come up with a solution. I remember him alongside me at the supermarket, pushing the cart as I hobbled along, and of course paying for the groceries as usual. Dad was incredibly proud of his grandchildren and great grandchildren. But first, we'll mention the cats. Even though he didn't much like cats, he had a way with Tuli and Chiquita in Ann Arbor, who always snuggled up with him when he was sleeping. Dad had a special way with babies and toddlers, crawling on the floor, playing with them. But as you'll hear, his relationships were intense and deep with all of his grandchildren as they grew into adult or almost adulthood. As parents, it has been so moving and meaningful for us to watch these relationships develop and grow. His legacy continues in our children and grandchildren. Finally, we would just like to thank our brother Jeff and sister Susan. Being so far away from Mom and Dad has been challenging for Elaine and me. Much as we tried to help however we could, we know that Jeff and Susan handled all the daily issues, and they and their kids visited Dad all the time. Words cannot suffice to express our gratitude and respect for you all. May Dad's memory be for a blessing.
Oh boy. Dad, I think this is the toughest endeavor I've chosen to do, to honor you by sharing a few of my thoughts. You were always the best speaker and speechwriter I knew. You helped me many times to compose and correct speeches of mine. Dad, I can sure use your help right now. This is the one of the most important speeches I need to give, and I don't want to disrespect you or disappoint you. Most of you know I didn't just lose a father, I lost my very best friend. People may say, oh, we lost the Bernie we all knew many years ago due to a horrible disease. However, no matter how hard some visits were and how challenging it was to try and talk, you were the same wonderful father I grew up with and love. I was very fortunate to have many visits that remain very special to me. I don't know how many people can say how well they got along with their fathers. I know I can. Dad and I had a special relationship. We would do everything together, whether it was him taking me to a Jets game when we were both much younger, or a Bomber game in the freezing cold. I remember Dad sneaking in a thermos of spiked hot chocolate for the two of us, or out for pizza on the weekend. We were the original barbecue duo. Regardless of the season, we could be seen flipping, turning something on the grill. As mentioned, my dad was a fix-it and taught me how to do electrical, plumbing, woodworking, or anything around the house. When I bought my first house on Seven Oaks, he helped me with gutting all the plumbing and electrical, and then to replumb and rewire everything. He even started to refinish all the cupboards when I got sick with mono. If we ever got ourselves in trouble, he would phone our cousin Bill of blessed memory. Bill would yell at us first, but then be there in 5 minutes to lend a hand or lend us a tool or both. I remember when my sister Lori and brother-in-law Charlie lived on Montcalm, we always went there to fix something. They bought me a shirt with the initials J&B Repair Service, Jeff and Bernie, and Dad was B&J Repair Service, Bernie and Jeff. Well, Dad, I may have lost your helping hand years ago, but somehow you passed on your ticket to Ben, who is now the replacement B for B&J Repair Service. He has huge shoes to fill. I don't remember all the great road trips we did, but whether it was the trip to New York, a trip to California, Radium Hot Springs, Banff, Ann Arbor. We had fun. When we went to Minneapolis winter as a family, we were driving and I lost control of the car. It spun out, hit a reflector, and slipped into the ditch. You were not mad. You didn't care the car was damaged. You just made sure I was okay. We got back on the road after getting out of the ditch. We drove off. 5 minutes later, you started pointing the car to the shoulder. I thought something was wrong with the car. Then you turned to me and said, "Now it's your turn to get behind the wheel." You said, "I need to get behind the wheel right away." I was scared and trembling and did not want to, but you said again, "You have to. You need to do this so you won't be afraid to drive again." This is just one example of the many life lessons you taught me. Dad, no matter how challenging it was, we all stood by your side, but no one like our mother. She was your rock. She stood by you every day while you were still in the house. She kept your routine going. When it just became too hard for us to see you, for you to physically be in the house, we moved you to the personal care home. And no matter how hard it was for Mom, she visited you every day. We all know some of those visits didn't go well, and the words coming out of your mouth were less than flattering. Dad, forgive me. I remember one of my last visits with you, Ben, and Susan. We were at a table having party time. We were talking to you and trying to engage you, and you said that I was a little piece of dot, dot, dot. But then, following that statement, you said, "But he's a really nice piece of dot, dot, dot." Dad, in your last days when we were all by your side and we were praying for your comfort and peace, oh, I just wanted to hear you call me another piece of dot, dot, dot again. On the final day of your painful journey, you were laying there motionless, listless. You showed me that somehow you were still in control. Shabbat was fast approaching. Lori took me aside and said that what are we going to do? We are not leaving his side, but we still need to get things ready back home somehow, if we can. We couldn't call anyone. It was Yontif. What should we do? Lori and I agreed. It really didn't matter. That is our only focus right now. We can just grab anything at home. However, you obviously disagreed with our decision. After this conversation, no matter how much you were out of control of the situation, you were totally in control. I know you made the decision to finally let go because you wanted to give us the opportunity to make Shabbat. Dad, we all love you and miss you.
We will now hear from Joshua, Rebecca, and Benjamin Goldstein.
The best memory I have of my Zeta Bernie is the ones when he picked me up from school, summer camps, helping him roll jars in the crawl space for the pickle season, the laughter that we had, the love for each other. The best nickname I got from him was Big Ben, and he stuck with that even on the good days when I visited him at the personal care home. He called me that. He's gone, but he'll still be his Big Ben. I love you so much. The last time I visited my Zeta at the care home, another resident asked me if he was always this miserable. I was sad, and I tried to explain what a remarkable man my Zeta was. I think it's important to remember my Zeta for who he is and not for what his disease was. My Zeta was the most selfless man I knew. He always put his kids first and tried to help us in any way and did whatever he could to make us happy, whether it be barbecuing outside in Winnipeg winter or offering us rides before we asked, even after he couldn't drive anymore. For the 3 years I had braces, he was my orthodontist chauffeur. He would pick me up from school way earlier than I needed to be picked up, just so we could go for ice cream before my appointment. He made me promise not to tell my parents because he didn't want it to spoil my dinner. Even though this was 2:30 in the afternoon and I never get full, I of course kept the promise. During our Shabbos meals, when my Bobby made chocolate cake, he would scoop off the icing of his piece and give it to the grandchildren because he knew it was their favorite part. He was also one of the funniest people I knew. When we were in Toronto for Noam and Ruth's wedding, I sat down next to him and asked if he was excited for the wedding. He said, "Yeah, it should be fun, and if it's not, we'll drink until it is." My My Zeta had the warmest heart and loved all his children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren so much. His face would always light up when we would show him pictures of the family. Near the end, he had troubles knowing exactly who I was, but he knew he loved me. When we would ask him if he knew who I was, he would look at me, kind of confused at first, but then with the biggest smile, he would say, "Well, of course, it's my sunshine." My Ziti taught me many things: how to make scrambled eggs, a foolproof way to put a pillowcase on, how to kibitz around when needed, and how to be a mensch. It's sad to see his time come to an end, but my Zeta had such a full life. He married my beautiful Bobby close to 65 years ago, had 3 amazing children, 8 grandchildren, and 9 great grandchildren. He worked hard, he was able to go on lots of trips, and made a lot of friends along the way. My Zeta is loved by so many people. He was the most popular guy in the hospital. He will never be forgotten and always stay within our hearts. I love you, Sadie, and I'll miss you.
I'd like to start off with a quick story about my Zeta that displayed characteristics that we all admired from him. Many years back, I'd finished doing some yard work for him. He would always pay me, even after telling him I didn't need money. And my parents, we were having dinner or whatever after, my parents once made a comment to him, he can volunteer, you don't have to pay him. And his response was, "I don't believe in volunteering." And the reason that's funny is because it was the same year he won a Shem Tov Award for volunteering in the Jewish community. So, when you walk into Bob and Zeta's, and literally the first thing you see when you're about to walk up the stairs are these 2 absolutely beautifully written poems about Bob and Zeta. Well, lo and behold, the author standing in front of you right now. I'm actually a tremendous poet, if you weren't aware. Some people call me part-time paramedic, full-time poet. But I did retire from poetry quickly, starting grade 6 and ended in grade 6. My brilliant grade 6 teacher, Maureen Pollock, introduced us to this poem, and the idea And the idea behind it is that there's this kid and he's looking up to a mentor and he's telling him all these things that they taught this kid while they thought the kid wasn't looking. So what we had to do is use that template, but use our own experiences with our mentor of our choice. So this is it. Um, when you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you spoil me. I learned that sometimes it's okay to spoil someone. When you thought I wasn't looking, you took someone to the hospital. I learned that you have to be caring. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you barbecue in the freezing winter. I learned that sometimes you have to do stuff you don't want to. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you buy me expensive stuff. I learned that you have to care about people more than money. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you read to my little brother. I learned that you have to take extra care of little children. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you give me a big smile the first time I hit a baseball or got someone else. I learned that you have to make people happy and proud. When you thought I wasn't looking, you asked me if I was still hungry during dinner. I learned that you should make sure to think of other people before yourself. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you help my dad do lots of work. I learned that you should help others. The next two lines we took from the original poem, but when you thought I wasn't looking, I learned most of life's lessons that I need to know to be a good and productive person when I grow up. When you thought I wasn't looking, and I wanted to say thanks for all the things I saw when you thought I wasn't looking. To end, I'd like to talk about two things. First, what I'm most inspired from by Zeta, and second, what I've learned from experiencing right now. What I'm most inspired is how much he loved, specifically his family. He loved his grandchildren very much. Of course, Atara being number one and myself being number two, and of course his great grandchildren and our own children and his own children. But there's one person I want to specifically talk about, and that's how much he loved Bobby. He loved her truly like none other, even when he was going through Alzheimer's and completely changing into a different man. It was still apparent how much he loved Bobby. Yes, he'd make snarky comments to her every so often, but he'd usually follow up later worried about her, asking where she is, or pulling out a chair for her before she sat down to eat, waiting for her, and opening doors for her. It's amazing to see. Maybe there was one thing that never changed, and that was how much he loved Bobby. In 2014, I went on a trip to Israel, studied at the Aish Torah College in Jerusalem for 3 weeks. One of the things we learned there, or I learned there, and I'm still trying to apply to my everyday life, is when you're given any situation, you should strive to find the positivity and happiness behind it. I've been trying to do that with this, despite the fact that these past few days have been the darkest and toughest of my life. But I've thought of two things. Number one, it's enlightening knowing that Zeta is able to return to his mom and dad and his brother Irv. Secondly, I'm thankful I'm thankful for having most of our family together right now. I don't see my family often at all, whether I'm up north or in the city. And it's unfortunate because I truly have the best family and I love everyone a lot. Even though I may show it sometimes in odd ways. But Zeta would have been very happy for me to hear that because there wasn't a time when that he wasn't there wasn't a, Zeta would have been very happy to hear that because there wasn't a time that he was happier than when the whole family was together. I remember Zeta sitting at the front of the table, looking down and just smiling, thinking, wow, I created a legacy. I helped create a legacy. And he did. He did, Zeta. One last thing that's worth mentioning, in 1988, my Zeta had a quadruple bypass surgery. After that, the doctor gave him 10 years to live. That would mean, if that held true, he would have passed away in 1998. I would have been only 4 years old, and Ben wouldn't have even known him. My Zeta passed away when I was 23 years old. I feel incredibly blessed, and everyone else should too.
We will now hear from Michael Moffat.
Hello, I'm Michael. I'm Elaine's son and Sadie's grandson. Um, as everyone has been, I've been cycling through memories of Sadie, especially over the past few days. And the things that I've been thinking about the most, or what I've been remembering the most about him, is his voice. He had a very distinctive voice. Um, it was a little nasal, very piercing at times. You could always pick it out in a room, and he always sang on key, and he loved to sing. He whether it be in shul or at the Seder table, or the classics with Dave Diamond when he visited Zadie at home. Um, he was a wonderful man. He was a wonderful Zadie father, friend, relative, and I will truly miss hearing him sing.
We will now hear from Atara, Ozzy, and Noam Grisman.
Uh, as I was sitting on the flight to Winnipeg, I was thinking, what could I say today at this here? And it occurs to me the best person to ask would have been Zeta B. He was the one that always knew exactly what to say. He was the one that would just, on a dime, just be able to whip up this comment that made us all feel unbelievably appreciated um, and just loved. When my other grandfather, Zeta Meyer, passed away, it was Zeta Bernie's speech that had the whole room in tears. I can still hear it now. And he was a man. He worked really hard at everything he did. He was in the office. He was in his garden, his handiwork, his volunteer projects, which you've heard so much of. We appreciated everything about it, whether we were eating his pickles, drinking his wine, or especially the grill. No matter what temperature it was outside, you could always find Zeta Bernie grilling, plus or minus 40. The only thing that would change would be the choice of beverage at his side. I remember sitting and having chats with him where he'd give us advice, be it whether or not my life plans, where I should live. He was a very big fan of Canada, or even just fashion advice. Whenever I'd buy a suit or tie, especially a tie, I'd try and go with him to get it. If not, I'd bring it to him and have him approve it. He had a very, very good fashion sense, and his advice was always to the point, maybe sometimes a little too colorful for describing here, maybe sometimes a little too colorful for describing anywhere. But we'd always end our conversations on the phone with, love you, miss you, and he'd always tell me if I ever felt like I needed a break, his door was always open. We're always welcome to come visit him in Winnipeg. Every flight to Winnipeg, I remember coming down that escalator and seeing him bottom, just at the old terminal, just right the overhang by the escalator, waiting for us, his leather jacket. And I also remember him driving us back to the airport every time, including once at 4 in the morning. It was completely dark out. There was a snowdrift 4 foot high on the driveway. Here's a man who's, maybe 15 years over after his coronary bypass, sitting and shoveling in -20 the snow that's going to blow back in 20 minutes just so he can take me out to the airport where we pass other stalled cars on the road there. Without complaining, with barely letting me help. Um, Having him lead our Pesach Seder is something I'll never forget. I remember his knee would act up. In the later years, we'd have to go walking afterwards. It's 1 a.m. We're walking down Vanier, just in the cold, the April Winnipeg April, and we would even see the Northern Lights sometimes. He davened Namim Sukkeh de Zimra, had a haftorah no one could beat, and when I was younger, he definitely had the warmest suit jacket you could put on when the shul got too cold. His last years were not easy on him. Due to his declining health, he was not able to do everything he was once able to. The garden went untended, the crab apples started to rot, and the power tools in the garage started to gather dust. But he was always caring for us, even if he didn't always know exactly what was going on. I know he isn't able to get us from the airport anymore. Our visits would be a lot different, a lot more one-sided. I know he still loves us just the same. We love him as well. I'm sure he's still up there, finally getting to finish his work in the office, bottling a fine vintage wine, and of course tending his garden that I'm sure has no more damn rabbits. Love you and miss you, Zadie.
I'm going to read a speech from my brother Yoni, followed by some of my own words. A lot of my memories of Zeta Bernie revolve around Pesach. Each year we would come to Winnipeg, and when I was younger, I remember being jealous that my older siblings got to fly out early to help, and I was so excited when I was finally old enough to enjoy the extra 3 days in Winnipeg with Bobby and Zeta, getting everything ready. I wasn't allowed in the kitchen, of course, at least not until the serious cooking was done, but I did get to tag along with Zadie, moving things out from the crawl space, siphoning out the wine, moving the furniture, and going to the wholesale grocer to stock up on produce. Everything was so well organized and well defined, and looking back, I realized how impressive it really was that he had this whole production of Pesach for the entire family down to such a fine art, especially during tax season. Then came the Seder. Eventually, I worked my way up, not only to the adults' table, but I got to sit next to Zadie and help him pass out the matzah and the maror. The efforts he made each year to make sure the horseradish was fresh and spicy, so we could have our contests about who would eat the most, and we could all watch Uncle Jeff turn bright red. Pounding, that's the stuff. And of course, the best part, finding the afikoman and bargaining, first with Irv and then with him, for each year's present or cash payoff. I remember Goldeye games, go-karts, and mini golf, barbecuing with J&B. One finger, just this way, not this way. And through all these, and especially the family time at 54 Vanier, I always felt that Zadie paid so much attention to me and only me. Even though we were all there, and I know he was doing the same with all of us, it always felt like he was taking special interest in me and what was going on in my life. I remember how quickly and seamlessly he welcomed Debbie into the family. Immediately, she became another granddaughter to him, and I remember the joy in his eyes when he met my eldest Itai, how proud he was to hold his great-grandson. To me, his joy didn't feel like Itai was his fifth great-grandchild, but it felt like it was a new experience. And that is what it always was with Sadie, an intense, loving, and personal connection. One thing I especially love about Zadie is how he took enormous pride in all of us. Every time there was a family gathering, he would make a speech complete with inevitably choking back tears as he looked around at his family. I want to thank my family for all the help you've given through Zadie's deterioration. I have really felt the effects of being so far away. Thanks to Bobby, Uncle Jeff, Auntie Susan, Josh, Rebecca, and Ben for being there, visiting regularly, and taking such good care of him with respect that he deserves. I only visited a couple times in the past years, but I could really see that he was in such great hands with you around. Thanks to my mom and Auntie Elaine for the regular visits, and how together with Uncle Jeff, you were all able to manage the situation and keep everything on track as best possible. You each use your strengths in sorting out the responsibilities through your regular sibling conferences. It was something impressive to see. Thanks to the Greenfields for all the visits and invites, and thanks to Lolita and Hermie for the care that you have given. Hearing about his last couple days in the hospital, I'm so happy that he was surrounded by those who loved him, and he was never alone. I am so lucky to have enjoyed Zadie's company for so much of my life. I'm so happy and proud that I was able to enjoy all these years with him, and that I was able to be a part of the source of such pride to him. We're all blessed to have known, loved, and be loved by him. Tehei nishmatot tzrura b'tzror ha'chaim. So that was Yoni's speech. Zadie always taught me to never be late for a meeting, always be there prepared, which is why I've got my United napkin with my speech written on it. Zadie may have been the pillar of a community, a very sharp dresser, a partner at his firm, and the owner of the best darn comb over the 1970s ever saw. Um, but to me, the image that I'll always have of him will be in his house coat, on his hands and knees in the living room, or holding some baby in his lap, playing with us kids. He would come to such great light around us, and it was such a just privilege to be in his presence. I remember as a child just wanting to be near you, Zadie, whether it was in the garden while you were shaving, raking leaves, just to be wherever you were. I remember soon after the bypass, Bobby and Mum having to drag you off the front lawn because I asked you to play catch and you said yes, and nobody was going to stop you from doing that. You taught me a lot of things in life. You taught me how to barbecue a steak, how to flip macaroni upside down and not have it fall out of the bowl, how there was no possible way that raspberry with jam without seeds could be better than raspberry jam with seeds, how to tie a tie and cut a brisket. And I think one of the deeper things that you taught me was, I think you heard a little bit from my dad about how different Zadie and my dad were. You taught me that those differences were always only ever complementary and not contradictory, and that there is more than one way to be a good person in this world. And that's something that I learned very deeply, very early in life, and I'll carry that with me.
When I think about my Zadie, there are three main stories that come to my mind. The first was from when I was a little girl and our family still lived in Winnipeg, around the corner from Bobby and Zadie on Montcalm. Zadie was an avid gardener and he took great pride in his garden. I loved his garden, especially his tulips, and he knew that. In the spring, when the first of his red and yellow tulips came up, he clipped the first tulip or two and left it for me on my night table in my bedroom in one of those Pepsi Cola plastic cups that were ubiquitous in Bobby and Zeta's house throughout the 90s. My second story is years later when I was studying in Israel for the year after high school. Bobby and Zeta came to visit me in March, and the three of us took Israel by storm. Zadie was very proud to sneak in through the back stairwell to my all-girls dorm so that he could see where I lived and make sure it was okay. Zadie and I would go out every morning to pick up the English newspaper and the coffee and muffins and croissant, and Bobby and Zeta and I would have breakfast together before getting started on our day, which mostly consisted of me taking them on probably 2 long walking tours all around the city that I was living in.
We had so many adventures together over those few weeks, seeing so much and taking everything in. But the most fun part was that everywhere we went, people often mistook Bobby and Zadie for my parents and not my grandparents because they were so young, but more so because of our extraordinary closeness, which was more typical of a parent child dynamic than a typical grandparent child one. My third story is at another part of our lives. After Zadie retired from accounting, he started taking courses at the university about comparative religion and politics. He enjoyed being in the university environment and having the opportunity to learn more about topics that had always interested him. And I so much admired this about him. Since I was in university as well at the time, we would compare our student card benefits and discuss different profs and assignments, which Zadie generally elected to decline. It was recently after Elon and I got married, and one day on the phone, Zadie mentioned in passing that he wanted to come and visit and see my apartment and how our life was shaping up. So we invited him right away. We decided that reading week would be the best time, since Zadie and I would both be off school. Zadie came to visit. I took him on a tour of U of T. Elon cooked dinner for him. Zadie took us to the Home Depot to get some things for our apartment, and we just enjoyed each other's company. Reflecting on those stories that stuck out in my mind today, I know that Zadie was a man who had a clear sense of what mattered to him in life, and he pursued it. As the patriarch of our family, not only was he so loved and looked up to by all of us, but he always made sure that we knew how important we were to him as well.
On the holiday of Sukkot, we lift up the Arba Minim, the four species. And in one hand you have a lulav, a hadas, and an arava. Each one of them is missing either taste, smell, or both. You put it together with the etrog, the citron, and then all of a sudden what happens is the taste or the smell that was missing is now restored because the etrog has both taste and smell. In many ways, Zeta Berni was the etrog of our family. Our etrog was kept in Mahudar, special condition, due to some help from some wonderfully special people. And our family would like to thank, from the bottom of our hearts, Hermie and Lolita for their loving dedication to Dad. Special thanks to Heather Kraut for all of your help. Our deepest appreciation to Shauna and Daryl Levy, Stuart, Kathy, and Shayna Greenfield and Murray Greenfield for your constant love and support, which is truly constant, and it's a bond that's very deep. And it was evident, particularly this week. Special thanks to Benson and Sharon Lubinsky. They're our neighbors, you know, and Dad and Benson were business partners for 50 years, and they're not just neighbors, they're very dear to us. Special thanks to Phyllis Spiegelman, who's been Dad's loyal friend and Mom's rock in many, many ways. And thank you so much, Phyllis. Due to the holiday of Sukkot, there will be no public meal of consolation. Due to the holiday, Shiva visits will begin on Sunday, October the 15th, until Thursday morning, October the 19th. Visits will be appreciated between the hours of 10 a.m. and 12 noon, 1 p.m. and 5 p.m., and 6:15 p.m. until 8:45 p.m. Monday services, Sunday, October 15th at 9 a.m., Monday through Thursday at 7:30 a.m. Evening services will be 6:30 p.m. Zeta Bernie, Dad, Bernie Goldstein will be sadly missed by his loving wife of almost 65 years, Evelyn, his children, Elaine and her partner Al, Lori and Charlie, Jeff and Susan, his grandchildren, Michael and his fiancee Almaz, Atara and Ilan, Yoni and Debbie, Noam and Ruth, Josh, Rebecca, and Ben. His great grandchildren, Davida, Ori, Adia, Miriam, Lior, Shalev, Itai, and Elia, and Oran. His loving brother in law and sister in law, Chuck and Carol Feynman, and numerous friends and relatives. Donations in Dad's memory may be made to the Alzheimer's Society of Manitoba and the Jewish Child and Family Service. If everybody could please rise, Ozzy Grisman will say a Kel Male Rachamim.
Just for the record, Gabby and I will also sadly miss him. I'm sorry. It's been a tough couple of days. El Malay Rachamim Shochain Bamerumi Hamitzay Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei HaShechina Malot Kedoshim Oteorim Kezawar Arakia Mazirim Nishmat Dov Ben Gershon Shalach Leolamo Bavur She'anachnu Mitpalelim Biad Azkarat Nishmato Began Eden Day Menuchato Lachain Balarachamim Yastireyo B'Seiter Knafav Leolamim Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai Unachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar amen.
Could the pallbearers please come forward? Interment will take place in the Bnei Avram cemetery. Please stay until the Avelim, the mourners, have left first.